Community Energy Project is premiering its new documentary, Grassroots to the Grid, on May 29th at the Red on Salmon in Portland. The film highlights local families and advocates leading clean energy and climate action across the city. And the event includes a community resource fair at 2:30 p.m. before the film screens at 5:30 p.m. Get tickets now at cepdoc.eventbrite.com. That's cepdoc.eventbrite.com. Did you know it's now legal to pass people on bicycles in a no passing zone in Oregon, as long as they're riding at less than half the speed limit? If you're thinking of passing a bicyclist, ODOT recommends to first just be patient, wait for a good moment to pass, and then once it's clear, to move fully into the next lane and pass at 5 miles below the speed limit. And lastly, wait until you see the bicyclist in your rearview mirror before you move back over. When you take these steps to avoid crowding people on bikes, it keeps everyone safe on Oregon's roads. A message from ODOT. Today on CityCast Portland, what a shooting at a Pearl District bar reveals about security in the central part of our city, the leadership musical chair is happening in our housing agencies, and AI has finally hit Powell's. Joining me today are Stumptown Savings founder Bryan M. Vance and our very own executive producer John Notarianni. Thanks for hanging out with me this morning, you guys. What's up?
Hey, good morning, Claudia.
Hello. Now, before we jump into the news, I usually ask an opening question so any new listeners can get to know our guests a little better. And today's is inspired by the sports bra announcing their crowdfunding campaign earlier this week that allows anyone to own a piece of their rapidly expanding business model for as little as $250. For those not in the know, the Sports Bra is a groundbreaking women's-only sports bar on Northeast Broadway. It was like the first of its kind in the world, and a couple years back, Alexis Ohanian, co-founder of Reddit and husband of tennis legend Serena Williams, invested in the sports bra to help it expand into other cities. And since then, the bar has announced plans to open locations in Boston, Indianapolis, Las Vegas, and St. Louis. Now, the crowdfunding goal is to raise $1.2 million by August 4th. And Jenny Nguyen, founder of the sports bra, said that raising funds this way will further disrupt the $32 billion sports bar industry. And she didn't say this outright, but I'm just going to say it. I just think it's cooler and more punk and way more Portland. So back to the question. If other Portland businesses opened up opportunities like this to invest, which one would you most like to own part of?
Okay, so I've thought about this. We want a business that has like constant demand, probably low overhead, you don't have to put a ton of money into it, and is truly iconic. And for that reason, I think the business I would like to invest in is the Unipiper.
Is that a business, John?
I am sure it's a business. That guy gets paid for being the Unipiper. I'm sure he has like an LLC. And think about how scalable it is. Like, nobody can see his face. You could have Unipipers in every city across the country.
I'm seeing the vision.
I think the Unipiper franchise is my $1 million idea.
I'm totally on board, John. First, I was definitely like, Bryan, like, what the hell are you talking about? But once
you want to own a person?
Discover, I was like, oh yeah, and no one will ever know. That's a great idea. What about you, Bryan?
Oh man, I didn't think of anything as clever. Honestly, like I do this all the time. I'm always like, man, I wish I won the lottery and I could just like buy a portion of this. I think honestly, if I could do any Portland business, it would actually just like buy the rights to Nico's ice cream, which sadly went out of business, and just keep it going in my own backyard. Yeah, Nico shut it down, and rumors are he moved to Southern California to practice real estate. So,
oh my gosh,
yeah,
please do that.
So there's
Bryan.
no Nico's ice cream, but I would just like open it in my backyard so I could have it whenever I wanted personally. So,
oh my gosh, I will invest in your investment. This sounds great.
John will help me get ice cream. I like this.
Oh man, that's awesome. So I also was like, oh, what would I do? And every business that I was like, yeah, I'd invest in that is already publicly traded. I'm just like, okay, I guess I'll just invest in them for real.
So you actually could.
I'm like, maybe I'll just do that. Columbia, I'm coming for you. Thank you both for your answers. On to the news. Bryan, you're kicking things off. What caught your eye this week?
Yeah, so I am focusing on some reporting by Sophia Cassette at the Oregonian and Jake Halter at KGW. There was a shooting outside of a Pearl District bar. Yes, Pearl District. This actually caught me off guard when I was reading these stories. I had to think for a minute about where in the city we were talking about. The shooting last month outside of a bar called the River Pig Saloon left 3 women injured. Shannon Anthony Lyons Jr., who's 31, was arrested and is now facing charges of attempted murder, first-degree and second-degree assault, unlawful use of a weapon, and being a felon in possession of a firearm, because it turns out Lyons was convicted of first-degree manslaughter back in 2014. Now, what's interesting about this shooting is this was actually the second incident at the River Pig Saloon in the past 6 months involving violence. In December, a woman was stabbed trying to leave the bar, and the bar's owner is sounding the alarm. You know, he recently spoke with KGW talking about how he's owned this bar for 15 years, and, you know, for the first decade plus, they never had any sort of incident like this. And it's only in recent years that crime has really picked up in the Pearl District in particular, and sadly outside of his bar, that has left several people wounded and hurt. And he is citing a lack of political will and policy that honestly I've heard a lot of people talk about that they feel like is leading to rampant lawlessness in our city. So this shooting is just merely an example of some of the things that a lot of people are talking about. What's interesting is the owner, Ramsey Hattar, cited in his interview with KGW that the county knew that Lyons was a felon. I get what he's saying here, but I don't understand what he actually expects the county to do. If Lyons served time and was released, we can't have him followed around by personal security 24/7 to ensure that he doesn't commit crime. This is an unfortunate thing that happened. I don't see how we realistically could have prevented this specific incident, but I do think there's something bigger here that he's citing, which just feels like a lack of support from the city, from the police, from society at large around crime in our city.
I think he was talking about the fact that he got access to a gun. I think that's what he was saying, because felons are not in the state supposed to have access. Yeah, but I think that's what he was saying. He wasn't like, he's a felon. Yeah. Why wasn't someone looking at him? He was just like, he had a gun. You know, I agree with you, but I'm just saying, I think that was the...
I'm just saying, I think he's aiming his frustrations there at the wrong level. Like, you need to go to Congress about that. That's been a federal issue for decades now. That is not anything that our DA or our mayor or anyone can do anything about. We have a broken system around firearms access in this country. Doesn't matter what Nathan Vasquez wants to do. He's not going to prevent that from happening. If someone wants to get their hands on an illegal gun, they can do it. If someone wants to possess a gun when they're not supposed to, they can do it. It's just the fact that we have so many loopholes in this country. But I do think that there's something interesting here. You know, buried in the KGW report was this fascinating stat that out of the 50 largest cities in America, Portland ranks 47th for police to population ratio. So the amount of police that we have per person, we are 47th out of 50 in the country. And I do think there's something to be said about when there isn't any sort of law enforcement presence in an area, you do tend to see higher rates of crime in certain areas. And it's interesting that this is now happening in a place like the Pearl District, which, I don't know, just not a place that I thought this was going on.
Yeah, I mean, for a while, the owner of the River Pig Saloon was getting slack from the community saying, hey, you're not doing enough. And the patrons themselves were like, I don't feel safe here. And so he supposedly beefed up to 3 security guards during the weekend. And he also pays into Echelon, which, as we all know, is the private security that the Pearl and several parts of downtown hired, like starting, I don't know, like right after the pandemic, because of homeless encampments and stuff. If you were here that long ago, you might remember seeing headlines about, Echelon roughing up, you know, homeless people, and like there being issues with private security, you know. But the reason a lot of the business owners downtown all decided to pitch in and just hire Echelon is because of the thing that this owner is talking about right now. They're just like, there are no police. There are no police, and we need somebody, something that looks like official, that, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, if I owned a business and people were getting stabbed and shot, I think I would just be like, I guess I'm shutting down. Like, fuck that. Like, I don't want to.
Right. Like, if anything.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to think about in terms of both the politics of where we are in terms of police funding in Portland right now and sort of the perspective of how people feel about crime versus what the stats are. Because remember, we have seen like pretty historic drops in the number of homicides in the city. We're down about like half from where we were in 2022. But at the same time, there's a big push and pull going on about potential cuts to the Portland Police Bureau that are being considered in this year's city budget. It's worth noting that like no actual sworn officers are being proposed as cuts. But at the same time, the PPB is working on a ballot measure to inject about $50 million from the Clean Energy Fund into the PPB's budget. And that's something that we could be voting on by this fall if the signatures are collected. And I believe it's interesting, the surveying that has come out from the Oregonian recently shows that, broadly speaking, concerns about crime have been going down in Portland.
Right.
But at the same time, when something does happen in a concentrated area in a specific business, it's very scary and it's destabilizing to that community immediately around it and the city more broadly.
What I find interesting, though, is that, like you said, concentrated. It really does feel like it's just concentrated in front of the River Pig Saloon, which is so messed. I mean, honestly, I'm laughing, but I'm like, that's a bigger question. Because the guy who was shooting wasn't shooting at these women. The surveillance picked him up, and he was having some sort of dispute with somebody else, completely different area. The bullets
outside
just
of the
hit.
bar.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, I know there's bad luck, but it's like, what is it around that area? And like, if police wanted to investigate, I'm like, it's something with that area specifically, you know? And like the River Pig Saloon might just be in the middle of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could come down to like maybe the way the infrastructure is set up in that area isn't conducive to creating a sense of security, and it invites a certain type of lawlessness. I know that sounds crazy, but there was an actual area in outer southeast Portland, so still inside of 82nd, that there was this really strange triangle of roads that just seemed to be like a magnet for gun violence for a long time. And they instituted some basic like traffic calming measures and turned it into sort of like a street plaza. And now it's like, that's not really an issue there. So like there are other things you can do beyond posting an armed police officer in an area to reduce violence. Maybe there's something like that that could be explored here.
Well, thanks for looking into that, Bryan. Let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, the executive director musical chairs currently happening in our city's housing bureaus. History comes to life in Titanic, the artifact exhibition now on view at OMSI. Immerse yourself in a rare opportunity to explore the innovation, ambition, and tragedy of the Titanic while connecting personally with the people whose lives were forever changed by her voyage. With more than 100 authentic artifacts recovered from the wreck site, you'll experience an immersive gallery combining cinematic visuals and powerful audio reenactments that bring the ship's scale, beauty, and tragedy to life. There's also an optional VR tour for a deeper, more interactive exploration. Titanic, the Artifact Exhibition is on view now. Get tickets at omsi.edu. That's omsi.edu. So we've covered a few city-related housing scandals on the show. And last year, it was that the Portland Housing Bureau discovered millions in unbudgeted and unspent housing funds, a number that ballooned from something like 20-something million when first reported to $106 million earlier this year. Also this year, it was that Ivory Matthews, CEO of Home Forward, Portland's housing authority, was taking lavish and expensive out-of-state trips on the public's dime as her organization was falling apart. You might remember Willamette Week Sophie Peel was on the show talking about all of the work trips, and Ivory was forced to resign. Home Forward, by the way, is how the federal government disperses its HUD funding. Now, with the Portland Housing Bureau, all those unspent funds and all that, that's a city-run office that oversees affordable housing and rental assistance in the city of Portland. And their unspent funding scandal led to their then director, Helmi Hizarich, to also resign late last year. And she went straight to the press saying, hey, it was I who discovered what was by the way, then just $21 million in unspent funds. And she said she went straight to her bosses and they told her to keep her mouth shut. She accused them of scapegoating her and pushing her out because she and the mayor butted heads on like how to go about solving homelessness. Ultimately, she just wasn't a fan of his shelter idea. So after she was pushed out, the city replaced her on an interim basis with Michael Buonocore, who had already led the bureau when they were looking for Helmy, basically. And now they're sending the same dude, Michael Buonocore, over to Home Forward to replace Ivory Matthews, who again forced to resign. The way it's feeling, guys, is if the city was the mob, this dude is like our cleanup guy. Here's where things get more interesting, though. Basically, yeah. Like I was thinking of like Pulp Fiction.
He's the wolf.
Yeah, he's the wolf. Yeah. Just the city just covered in brain with like dumb t-shirts. Like just
sipping coffee in their bathrobe. Yeah.
I know. Totally. Oh, no. Okay, anyhow, the person they're sending over to replace Michael, who had replaced Helmy over at the Portland Housing Bureau, is none other than Keisha Light, who we've had on the show when she was the acting interim director of the Portland Water Bureau. She ended up becoming a public works customer service division manager, and that's where she's coming from now to lead the Housing Bureau. And I find this interesting because, and I know, again, just interim director, they're just like tapping into her leadership skills. But the original director of the Portland Housing Bureau, Helmy Hizarich, was tapped for that role because she had decades, and I mean decades, of experience in social housing and is considered a prominent U.S. affordable housing expert. There's more, of course, but I found all of this very interesting, and I'm curious what you guys think.
I mean, it can't help but be destabilizing to have this sort of roulette of interim directors and people jumping into positions and jumping out of positions and, you know, continually changing the leadership. I mean, anybody who's had any job knows that it sort of throws you for a loop when you suddenly get a new boss and have to figure out how to get things done under them. But it also, to me, just sort of speaks to how difficult it is to staff this stuff, right? That there aren't a lot of people just sort of sitting around with the experience, with the know-how, and that are willing to take these jobs on. Because you can probably get a job as a CEO at a private company and don't have to worry about some knucklehead podcasters like showing up and criticizing everything that you do, you know? I just have to imagine that the pool of people that are both qualified and willing to take on this work is relatively small, and that's what we're coming up against.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's unfortunate that it seems like there's only a small pool of people that we can pull from to fill these positions when we're in need. But I'm also grateful that there are those people that are experienced in our city government and experienced in leadership positions in our city government and understand how complex and bureaucratic it is, who can step into those positions. Because as John said, I'm sure they could get a job elsewhere that would pay better and wouldn't come with all the headaches that would be less thankless, but they're willing to do this. At the same time, though, I'm like, how do we fix this? Like, we have to open up some sort of national search to find leaders, like the best qualified leaders possible for this. But that costs money. And we're looking at like massive budget deficits. So it's like, are we just going to have to slap Band-Aids on these positions? I don't know.
And I also, to that point, Brian, if you go nationally, international to look for someone to replace Helmy, I'm sure within that world, they're like, you fired Helmy?
Oh, yeah. Right. You have,
like,
you have a bad
you're
reputation
gonna hire
now.
Me? You're gonna hire
no
me?
Thanks. Yeah.
You fired Helmy. Oh, okay, cool. Well, yeah, I'm gonna run there. I also think that trying to find leaders for bureaus that are already struggling must be difficult. You know, it's remember the joke that nobody wanted to be the commissioner for PBOT because it was just like a black hole of criticism and whatnot. And I think it's similar. Like, we all have our sights on Home Forward now and the Portland Housing Bureau. Bureaus that I think like maybe 10 years ago, no one even knew existed. You know?
Yeah.
And so now we're just like, what every freaking move. And I know our senior producer, Rachel Monahan, when we were discussing this, she brought up the point. She's like, when they were looking at Keisha Light, and I'm sure it was reporters, they found out that she had been practicing law in Tennessee and then was suspended, like license suspended over something, you know. When I read it, I was like, I don't understand. Just some technical stuff with like her and I think it was like a business partner. But that had not been uncovered when she was the interim director for the Portland Water Bureau. And the only reason people looked really deep is because she's coming in as the Portland Housing Bureau. And like that just proves like the magnifying glass that they have on. So I can also imagine that being a hindrance for people wanting to take this job, you know?
Yeah,
It's
that
going to
they
be an
don't
uphill
want to
battle.
bring anyone in that doesn't have anything other than either a squeaky clean track record or a long track record of doing good works in the city. You know, I mean, and I will say that incident with Light happened over 20 years ago. I don't find that to be disqualifying, but the onus is upon the city to sort of uncover these things and know them. And who knows how many potentially qualified applicants are sort of showing up at the door for these jobs that we just never hear about because of some other skeleton in their past.
Yeah, when we had Keisha Light on the show, I have to say my bias is that I really liked her. She was so cool.
No, I remember that interview.
Nice
like
person.
she seemed like a very personable like leader and someone who might be very good in this type of chaotic situation right now.
Exactly. Like it's totally the person that you're like, let's go grab a whiskey, you know? But I do want to quickly say that Michael Buonocore, who's moved over to Home Forward, again, that's like the federal branch of stuff. He basically has promised a new era. This is a quote now from the Oregonian. He has promised a new era of transparency and financial responsibility at the embattled agency. What he's done is he's taken a pay cut from $342,849, which is I think what Ivory Matthews was making. He's now going to be making $275,000 a year. He's also changing the role to director rather than CEO, which is what she was calling herself. And he's also no longer allowing staff to travel to Hawaii for a conference and board meeting for its captive insurance company or whatever the hell. So
that right there is a huge savings.
Yeah, those are the things. I did find it ironic that he was just like, I promise transparency, where I'm just like, dude, you came from the Portland Housing Bureau. Like, they were hiding money left and right. Like, and I'm sorry,
day.
allegedly. We don't know if they were hiding money, but like,
Right.
it could have been they knew about this money and they shut up, you know? So I'm just like, okay, great, you know?
I will say those are some interesting moves, though. If you want to start off on a good foot, that's some cool moves. I think anytime a leader of a struggling organization is willing to cut their pay instead of laying people off is a sign that they're actually in it for the long haul and they're looking for long-term solutions. I think too often people's result is to cut costs at the bottom. I think that's a really telling sign of maybe his philosophy towards leadership here that could be really helpful in the long term.
And it wasn't just him. There was a 10% cut from like all of the higher ups. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens now that there's new leadership in place. Let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, it's an AI scandal at Powell's Books. All right. John, what the hell's going on at Powell's?
Oh my gosh, it's raining AI, ladies and gentlemen. This comes from the reporting by Rachel Saslow at Willamette Week and largely by Born to Slog on Reddit. This individual says that they bought a couple books online from Powell's. I assume it was online because their post says they received them in the mail. And when they showed up, it was pretty clear that these books are just like AI slop. They said there's no authors, no copyright, no attribution to the art. And then posted some screenshots of these books that just once you spend a minute with them, you're just like, oh no, this is not right. There's this one book called Manufacture Handlebar Bags for Cyclists in Your Shed. And ostensibly that's what it's about. It's about like making messenger bags. But the font on the cover just sort of has that like ChatGPT AI style to it. There's like tools on the wall of the cover in like a workshop that are clearly like impossible and don't really exist.
The scissors that bend at a weird
scissors that are like 90 degrees and like a wrench that only has one side to it. You know, just like classic AI fuck ups. And then there's like this chart inside with all these different product types and then just like nonsense phrases. There's a picture from a coloring book that like the lines just don't make any sense. There's a children's book with a kid riding a sled that just has like AI nonsense written on the front of it. It's absurd. And
Wait, so
this guy was like,
found these books? He found
bought
these
them
books?
on powells.com.
Why? Why did he buy them?
That's what I want to know.
I want to know why he would buy a book
did he
about
not-
making. Yeah, like. Go on. I'm sorry. Go on.
You saw the cover.
Born to Slog, inquiring minds want to know. If you're out there,
Yeah.
tell us how you came into holding onto these books. But yeah,
Every
they're-
single AI book, it seems. What's the look of that draw?
Well, they're from this company that's Lightning Source LLC, which is sort of an on-demand printer. And you go down in the comments, these books are actually sourced from this company Ingram, which is the largest wholesale book distributor for like a lot of indie bookstores. Interestingly, you can find these same books on Broadway Books' website because they all go through this same sort of distributor. And I will say, I looked into it, and manufacture handlebar bags for cyclists in your shed is $2.50 cheaper at Powell's than it is at Broadway Books.
Oh,
so,
wow.
It is this sort of like auxiliary company that is sort of feeding these things into the Powell's web search, I imagine. But this isn't the first time that Powell's has been in an AI scandal either. You might remember last year, there was this whole thing where they released a new t-shirt that clearly had like AI manipulation on it that they had to apologize for and make a commitment to not using AI in the future. But yeah, I mean, the AI future is now, and it has come to Powell's books. What do you guys think?
As someone who has been accused of being AI because I use, quote, a chat GPT hyphen that you can't type on a regular keyboard. That's what someone accused me of. 99% Visible did a whole episode about this, actually. I feel
about
for Powell's a little
AI?
bit here. About people thinking that the M dash, that's what I use. I use the M dash pretty regularly.
AI.
But the M dash is a dead
Gotcha.
giveaway of AI. It's not. It's much maligned piece of punctuation that if you don't know how to type it on a keyboard, I think that says more about you than me. But I feel for companies like Powell's and Broadway Books who probably, as John pointed out, probably didn't even know this was for sale on their site because these companies are all trying to find ways to increase what's on there. But also like, that cover is so obvious. Like, I don't know how
Okay, wait, two things. Bryan, the funny part about this M dash is that the curse of the M dash has followed you from our days at OPB, when I remember a few messages from Bryan when he would have to copy edit us before we published online, and Bryan would just be like, this is what an M dash looks like. This is what a dash looks like. Get it together. Because another thing that people don't know is that the only like group of people keeping the M dash in business are journalists. We can't get enough of the M dash.
Yeah.
Like, it's us.
We love that thing.
So the fact that it's an M dash, that like they're still like, Bryan, this M dash, you're just like, it's
AI
real.
Bryan.
The other thing I was going to say is that I am fully just ready to just have all of my thousands of dollars taken from me as an older person because of AI, because you guys just explained all the reasons things are AI, and I'm like, guess what? It would have fooled me. I would have been like, okay. Like, I am one of those people that's just like, oh, look, the seal and the lion are best friends. Like, I'm totally going to get taken for everything.
Yeah, it's tough out there.
Yeah, I think even before we saw this crop of books from Powell's, other local booksellers have sort of been rallying against AI in publishing. Another story I saw this week, Always Hear Books on North Williams actually launched an open letter opposing AI generation in books and AI's role in publishing. They have like more than 30 different bookstores that have signed on saying that they're not going to use AI or allow it in their stores. Interestingly, Powell's Books was not a part of that. And I wanted to read this quote from the owner, John Hart, about this letter. Quote, I wrote a lot of words to say essentially, fuck AI. It has no place in our industry and we don't want it forced into our bookstores. Maybe it will do some good for us to take a stand. So one local bookseller really sort of trying to pitch the fight against AI in their local bookstores.
Yeah. What did Powell say? Has Powell said anything?
I haven't heard word from Powell's yet. No, I mean, I was just sort of seeing this post online today. So I saw it this morning. I think we should reach out to Powell's and see what they have to say about it. But yeah, no word from Powell's where you can buy that new bestseller. And let me say it again, manufacture handlebar bags for cyclists in your shed.
Oh my
By
God.
STEM School.
Copyright no one.
And I'm like, great, give me 20. All right. Oh, man. Well, that just proves that we got to be a little bit more diligent out there when buying, I guess, every single AI book that this person bought in one sitting. I'm assuming this is what happened, that he did his shopping and every book was AI for some reason. And like, he just hit the lottery.
I really hope that's the case. He didn't get a legit book in the hall.
Because I don't know how else. You guys, I really appreciate you hanging out with me. Thanks for going over some of these headlines. And yeah, I guess be more diligent about AI. Am I AI?
Oh my gosh. What is reality?
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend, rate it, leave us an amazing review. And don't forget, you can support the show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Portland neighbor. Just visit membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.
Or Powell's.
Or Powell's. Buy your books
Or
in
Powell's.
person.
Yeah.
Avoid the
Go buy
AI
them in person.
risk.
That is such a good tip. Seriously. Also, it's just so much more fun.